If you are interested in knowing what the best foods are to eat to increase your fertility and just for your overall health, you clicked on the right video. Hi, and welcome to my channel, Take Control of Your Health. I'm Dr. Cori Stern, and I'm really excited to have a returning guest, one of my favorite all-time guests, Sally Fallon Morell. Sally is the best-selling nutritional cookbook author, Nourishing Traditions. She's also the leading spokesperson for return to nutrient-dense diets, including raw milk, animal fats, organ meats, bone broths, and lacto-fermented foods. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. She's also the founding president of the Weston A. Price Foundation. If you don't know what that is, we are going to tell you about it because it's a great resource for everyone to learn about the truth about food. And she's also the founder of a campaign for real milk. And we'll have links to all of this in the description of the video. We did talk about real milk on the last show that Sally joined us for, and we'll have a link to that show in the description of this video as well. So again, Sally, thank you so much for taking out time. I know how busy you are. It was hard to pin you down, but I'm so thrilled that you're here. As you know, I'm one of your biggest fans. So let's get right into today's topic, talking about the best foods to eat for fertility. I consider you an expert on this topic.
Well, it's quite interesting. This really takes us right to Weston Price, because he found that all of the cultures he studied had what he called sacred foods, special foods for fertility. And they consumed these foods in preparation for conception and pregnancy, both the men and the women. So, for example, in Switzerland, when a couple got engaged, they started eating this very special spring butter that they made in the spring when the cows were just going out to the pasture, and it was a real deep orange color. And that was their fertility food. Among the Native Americans, the fertility food was bear fat. And if a couple couldn't get pregnant, they went on the bear fat diet. They ate nothing but bear fat for a month, and it always worked. They said it always worked. In Africa, one of the main fertility foods was liver. They never touched it with their hands. They considered it so sacred, and they ate it both raw and cooked. They also took care that the conception, the weddings, happened after the rainy season, after the grass was green, so that the good nutrients from the grass would be in the milk. Another fertility food he found in many cultures was fish eggs. And the Eskimos, for example, told him that they went to a lot of trouble to preserve the salmon eggs so they could have healthy babies. That's what they told him. So what do all these foods have in common? They are extremely nutrient dense and particularly high in what we call the fat soluble activators, vitamins A, D, and K. And we are not getting, in the standard American diet, we're not getting these vitamins, the way we should.
Well, yeah, because most people are not eating bear fat or liver.
Yeah.
The liver that they were eating, was that, which animal was that? Was there a specific animal?
Liver from the game that they killed.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the best liver is poultry liver because it has a really nice balance of A, D, and K, and it's milder and people like it better. So, just make some pate. It's very easy to do with your chicken livers or your turkey livers.
Yes, I grew up on that, called chopped liver.
Yes,
and
yes.
I still get the chicken livers from the farm, and we'll talk about how you can get good quality food from a farm a little bit later, no matter where you are. But I still get those chicken livers, and I love them.
It's one thing to get pregnant, but this other thing is to have a healthy baby. And we measure the health of the child by the bone structure and the width of the face whether the child has naturally straight teeth or not, because that's a sign that the body is being built according to the blueprint. That's our blueprint, to have naturally straight teeth. And I had something happen recently. We had a film crew at our house, 5 people, and all of them had wonderful bone structure, straight teeth. They were much younger than me, in their 30s and 40s. And I said, I've got to find out why they all have such good bone structure. And it turned out that all of them had eaten liver growing up. They weren't particularly on what I would call a great diet. Their parents weren't into Weston Price or anything, but they said, one of them said, my mother hated to cook, but she loved liver. And once a week she made liver for us.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah, very, very interesting.
Let's just, for the folks that don't know who Weston Price was, let's just talk about him a little bit and exactly what he did and how he made these discoveries about what foods people ate for fertility.
So Weston Price was a dentist, and he has his practice in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And all throughout the 30s, he traveled to remote parts of the world to study the dental health of isolated people. And he found 14 groups that had perfect dental health. And by that, I mean naturally straight teeth and no cavities. And when they had perfect dental health, they had good health overall. They had very attractive facial structure, strong, straight bodies, good musculature. They seemed to be immune to illness, and they had babies without pain, just with great ease. So that's what we mean by health. You don't get sick, and you have straight teeth, and you don't get cavities, and fertility is easy.
Right, because what he and another dentist that I'm aware of, Dr. Royal Lee, who is his peer,
Yes, a little younger, I think, but yes, yes.
they were finding that people's teeth and facial structures were changing with the introduction of processed food. I think it probably started in the US, from what I understand, with the invention of the refrigerator, maybe a little bit before that.
Well, certainly with the roller press, which brought us um, vegetable oils. But
Mm.
sugar had been around a long time, and sugar was the number one processed food. And Dr. Price called these the displacing foods of modern commerce. They were the foods of modern commerce, and they displaced the nutrient dense food that they had been eating before. And the one really great example he gave was the people in Switzerland drank raw milk, raw cream, ate raw butter, raw cheese. And after they were modernized and moved to towns where they had food stores, they were eating canned condensed milk and milk chocolate. So these they displaced the nutrient dense food that they'd been eating.
And then the solution that was designed, instead of getting people back into eating real food, was to create toxic chemical medications to treat the symptoms of disease, instead of actually treating the symptoms of nutritional deficiency, which is what causes most diseases, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Nutrient deficiencies and poisons. That's what causes disease. Well, even worse, Cori, they got people, dietitians, physicians, to demonize the foods that we need to be healthy, and to suggest that we use the foods that um, make us sick, like vegetable oils and um, you know foods without much nutrition in them, like fruits and vegetables. Not, believe me, I'm not against fruits and vegetables, but they're not nutrient dense foods compared to liver or raw milk or butter.
Right. I had a medical anthropologist on my show who had done a study of human bones from prehistoric times through modern times. And she saw that the the bones of meat eaters, meat and fat eaters, were the health markers and the developmental markers were much more the health and the growth
And the
patterns
density, the
and
density of the
the
bone.
bone
Yes,
density was
yes.
so much superior. And in fact, she said specifically that when when there was organized agriculture and grain was introduced into the human diet on a regular basis, all the health and developmental markers changed, and for the worse. So that really,
Well,
yeah,
some of the cultures that Dr. Price looked at ate grains. The Swiss and the Gaelic cultures, they had rye and oats. And but that didn't particularly affect their bone structure because they were also getting the really nutrient dense foods, the raw milk products, the organ meats, and the seafood.
the ratio of what they were
Yeah,
eating. And
yeah, we don't tell people they have to exclude any particular food type from the diet, but these foods need to be prepared properly. And grains, especially whole grains, if they're not properly prepared, which is really a kind of fermentation process, these grains act as anti-nutrients. It's not just that they are no nutrition, they block nutrition.
yes, so grains and sugars block nutrition. I know that probably um, before there was organized agriculture, there was more soaking, fermenting, sprouting of grains rather than processing them, refining them
Exactly.
into flour. And
So a
that,
really good example is the Australian Aboriginal people who grew grain. The early settlers described what looked like hayfields. And they actually had developed techniques to grow grain right across the desert in Australia. So the grain belt in Australia was very large. But when they harvested the grain, they put it in baskets and put the baskets in streams for 2 weeks. And so they were called leaching baskets. And so it was a kind of fermentation process and, washed away the anti-nutrients and so forth. And then they prepared these grains into these little cakes. And of course, the Aboriginal people were superbly healthy. So I say be kind to your grains and your grains will be kind to you. So that means not a lot of rough grains, not a lot of breakfast cereals are really a cruel way of preparing grains, but as genuine sourdough bread, soaked oatmeal, uh, sourdough pancakes, this kind of thing, it's fine. That can be part of your diet.
yeah, speaking of breakfast cereal, I think I learned this from you. Correct me if I'm wrong. The process by which the cereals are made, but the shapes,
Yes,
the extrusion process, right? They're called extruders. The machines that form the shapes of the cereal actually make the proteins in the grains toxic.
they do. Yes. Yeah. And by the way, pasteurization makes the proteins in milk toxic. That's why so many people are allergic to milk because the proteins are just almost indigestible when you pasteurize any kind of milk product.
And so many people are intolerant to wheat because the wheat seed has been altered. And, gluten has been given this reputation of being evil, but it's the gluten that's produced in the altered wheat seed that's the problem, not actual gluten.
And another huge problem with wheat is, I believe it was in the early 2000s, glyphosate Roundup was approved as a desiccant for wheat and sugarcane. And it's sprayed on at the very last minute. So you get full force of the glyphosate, which is really quite toxic. And it's much worse than spraying it when you start the wheat because it does have time to degrade a little bit. But if you're using it as a desiccant, it's 2 days before it's harvested.
And even when it degrades a little bit, it doesn't degrade that much, right? Because
No,
glyphosate is
right,
one of
right.
those poisons that's probably never going to end up leaving the planet.
Yeah.
And it spreads, unfortunately. And even when you have an organic farm, if there's a farm nearby that is being sprayed, wind blows stuff. So that has been a huge problem. We've seen many young people with severe intestinal damage due to glyphosate. So the solution is to really try to avoid GMOs completely, eat as much organic as possible. And we'll talk about how you can access some nutrient dense food from farms that are usually protected from glyphosate. So, Sally, I want to also bring up the point, all of the foods that you talked about, the fat soluble vitamin foods, the ADK foods. Fat in general is really important for normal hormonal production. Your hormones are actually derived, they're a fatty substance, fat and cholesterol. And those are nutrients that are critically important, not just for your hormonal health and for your fertility, but for your brain health, for your heart health, for your eye health, pretty much for your entire body. And so much false information is out there about fat, and people are so confused about it. And a lot of people still think that fat is bad for you or that fat makes you fat. And I know you actually wrote a book about that, didn't you?
Yeah, nourishing fats. Yes, it stuns me how pervasive this propaganda is, even today, when the science shows that none of this is true. I'll just give you an example. There was a study carried out maybe 15 years ago. It was carried out at Harvard. The researcher's name was Chavarro. And they were looking at women who had trouble getting pregnant. Well, they did a survey and they found that women who were on low fat milk and low fat diets had trouble getting pregnant, whereas women who drank full fat milk and ate butter. When they put the women on the low fat diets, when they told them to eat butter and whole milk, a lot of them did get pregnant. Well, this was very embarrassing to the establishment. I mean, Harvard is the center of this genocidal propaganda. So they said, well, if you're having trouble getting pregnant, you can drink whole milk and eat some ice cream. And once you get pregnant, you can go back on your low-fat diet. Now, this is incredible to me that they don't see that the diet you need to get pregnant is the same diet that you need to carry a baby to term and have a healthy child. They just don't give up on this message, unfortunately.
Yes, I know that. And that's why I'm in business pretty much, because most people were raised, I myself was raised on that food and struggled to regain my health. It's still a work in progress. And one of the worst offenders is not only taking people off full fat dairy or feeding them pasteurized dairy, but feeding them seed oils, which are highly inflammatory.
Now they call them vegetable oils. This is a little tweak of propaganda right there, because vegetables sound good, if they call it seed oils, people might not be quite so interested in them, but it's industrial seed oils. They started coming in the market in the early 1900s, often as partially hydrogenated seed oils in the form of Crisco and margarine. And there was a tremendous campaign to make people think that these were good for them, that they were scientific, that they even said if you use margarine instead of lard, your children will have better characters. They'd probably be less interested in sex for sure, because they weren't making the hormones. But it was sort of a jaw-dropping campaign to demonize the fats that humankind had been eating since the beginning, whenever that was. That traditional people always recognized that they needed the fats. They were the best part of the animal.
I can't tell you how many times I've been in a restaurant that put margarine on the table, and when I ask for real butter, they actually do not know what the difference is. And
This is butter, right? This is
right,
butter.
they
So,
argue with me. They argue
yeah,
with me.
yeah.
So I started bringing my own raw butter. I try to eat spring butter for as long as it's available, and I bring it with me now when I try not to eat in restaurants because they're cooking, I think, with seed oil now. But and I usually don't feel well when I eat in a restaurant, but I at least bring my own butter with me. I can say that. So, you know,
My husband and I once went to a restaurant and we walked in and said, do you have butter here? Oh, they said, no, we don't serve butter because you might have a heart attack in the restaurant.
yeah, so that's another fallacy for anybody that's worried. And so many people are still worried about the effects of cholesterol and fat on their heart health. I do have a video explaining what the truth is about cholesterol. So yes, butter is a cholesterol rich food. All animal foods
Yes.
are. But cholesterol is vitally important for health.
Well,
Again,
all your sex hormones are made out of cholesterol, estrogen, testosterone.
right,
And we're talking about fertility here. The men need a lot of testosterone, the women need a lot of estrogen to make a baby. And you cannot make these babies unless you have cholesterol to start with. And
correct.
then the key vitamin that helps convert cholesterol into the sex hormones is vitamin A. And that, I'm not talking about carotenes in fruits and vegetables. That's not vitamin A. And you need the true vitamin A that you get from the animal fats and from organ meats.
Right. When we talk about these vitamins A, D, K, we call them fat soluble because they are literally themselves are fat. You can't digest them without
Mhm.
fat. Um, so unlike some other vitamins, like vitamin C is water soluble, you can digest that without eating fat necessarily. But cholesterol is also a huge component of your brain. In fact, 60% of the cholesterol in your body is in your brain. So low cholesterol can lead to dementia, and it's a very common side effect of cholesterol lowering medications, except that if one day you wake up with dementia, your medical doctor is not going to say to you, oh, that's the cholesterol medication I prescribed for you 20 years ago that caused that.
Yeah.
So the
So
solution, go
another
ahead.
interesting purpose for cholesterol, the cells lining the digestive tract are very rich in cholesterol. And so you're going to have trouble with digestion if you're trying to limit cholesterol or your cholesterol levels are too low.
The way the human body works, everything is interconnected, and cholesterol is a vital nutrient for many body systems. So the solution is to eat good quality cholesterol
Yes.
from a healthy animal, right? So if you're eating, um, let's say, a cow that's not being fed grass, the cow's not going to be very healthy, and the cholesterol in the cow is not going to be healthy.
Well,
So
and the levels of fat soluble vitamins will be lower. I mean, this is the main reason we promote grass-based agriculture. I mean, it's better for the soil, it's better for the animals, all those things. But also the levels of A, D, and K are going to be much higher in those animals.
what foods can people eat today? Let's translate it into modern diet because I don't know I don't know any source of bear fat. Maybe there is, but a lot of people won't eat fish eggs. I love them, but what can people eat today to help themselves with their fertility and their overall health?
Well, we always recommend, in fact, we have this campaign, the 50% campaign, that you purchase 50% of your food budget directly from local farmers doing pasture raised agriculture. And the first one, and everybody likes eggs and chicken, so let's start there. So the egg yolks in a pasture raised hen are a powerhouse of nutrition. And the skin and fat in the chicken, so that means you have to eat no skinless chicken breast, eat the thighs and the wings, are wonderful sources of vitamin K, A, D, and K. So those are foods that people like. The other thing is we say try one way or another to get liver into your diet, whether it's liverwurst or pate or liver and onions, or some people cut the liver up into little pea-sized bits and freeze it and swallow it like vitamin pills. You can do that. Desiccated liver is another way of getting it into your diet. We also recommend cod liver oil, which is a great source of A and D. And I take my cod liver oil mixed with a little water, warm water, and just kind of down the hatch, but you can take it in capsules as well.
What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite brand of cod liver oil?
Well, we have several brands that we list on our website. You have to be careful with cod liver oil because most of it's garbage, highly processed. But there's about 4 brands that we recommend, and I personally take the fermented. It's actually the most stable of them all. But all the brands that we recommend, we have had tested, and we know that they're safe for you.
Yes, great. And we'll put a link to that on the description of this video. So that's a great segue to me talking about how to find a farm, a local farm near you, where you can get the food that Sally is talking about. And I just want to also mention, when you say pasture raised chicken, so many people are confused about pasture raised versus free range versus cage free. I know I have to educate my patients about this every day. So pasture raised is what you need to look for with chickens and with eggs. And
Yes,
that means they're roaming and free, and they're eating off the ground as chickens are
yes.
supposed to do. And sometimes their feed has to be supplemented depending on the weather, if the ground is frozen, but you want to
Well,
know what
you
they're
do have
eating.
to give grain to chickens. I mean, all chickens are getting grain. I promise you that. Speaking as a farmer, but at the same time, if they're getting the grass and the bugs and
Yeah.
so forth,
Bugs are good for chickens. So,
yes,
and you want to know what's in their feed, right? So,
yes,
um,
yes,
you if you know your farmer, you can find out
yes.
what they're feeding the chickens. So, if you are somebody that understands the vital role that food plays in your health, then here's good news. There is a site that you can get matched to a small scale family farm that grows and sells super high quality, clean, nutrient dense food in your area anywhere in the US. So I'm going to have a link that you can click on in the description of this video. It's going to be www.farmmatch.com/Dr. Cori, DRCORI, and you just put your zip code in and you'll be matched with a farm. Some farms you have to go pick it up from a drop-off location. My office is a drop-off location. Some farms will drive it right up to your door. If you're somewhere in what we call a food desert, where there is no small local family farm available, FarmMatch will actually find a farm that will ship to you. So you won't be left out. I get almost all my food from one of these farms, and it's been a game changer for me and my family. The best way to change the world is voting with your food dollars. Um, so also on the Weston A Price website, there is something called local chapters where I'll put a link to this too. You click on find a local chapter. You're going to put if you're in the US, you put your state in there, click on that, and it'll give you different counties. You can find a chapter that can give you information about where to locate nutrient dense food in your area. And if you're outside the US, there's actually local chapters in many, many countries. So there's also, you can click international so that nobody is left out. And we'll
There's
put a link.
also,
Yeah.
we have a website called realmilk.com with an interactive map where you can find the raw milk that's near you.
Yeah, I have that. I send that out to many of my patients as well. And we'll put a link to that in the description of this video also. So if you haven't ever tried raw milk or raw dairy, I highly recommend it. If you've never had it before, it's amazing. There's nothing else like it. If you'll realize that what you've been eating and drinking your whole life is
Not real.
disgusting. Yes. So just any other last thoughts, Sally? I want to also make sure that you know that the guy that we were talking about, Dr. Weston Price, that's the foundation that Sally is the president of, the Weston A. Price Foundation, who's dedicated to giving you information and educating you about these topics that we're talking about. So on their website, they have a whole bunch of it's health topics. You can read articles, you can listen to podcasts um, about anything related to nutrition and health. So it is my source for real food information. And they have brochures also that we hand out to patients. My favorite one is butter is better.
We also have a fridge magnet, pregnancy diet fridge magnet. So if you go to, I think it's products or orders, whatever, you can find it there.
Okay, yeah, I did see that on there too. And in your book, Nourishing Traditions, you do have a chapter on, it's called Feeding Babies. And the beginning of the chapter talks about fertility foods, which you discussed here today. And then also the rest of the chapter gives really great information about breastfeeding, about homemade formula if you cannot breastfeed for some reason, and also how to introduce solid food to your baby, exactly what to start with. So it's just a wonderful guideline. There's also a book called Nourishing Traditions for Babies and Children, right?
Yeah, the Nourishing Traditions book of baby and childcare. And then I have a Nourishing Traditions cookbook for children. So, but
Oh,
the baby
yeah.
and childcare book, I think anyone who planning to get pregnant, wants to get pregnant, that's a good book to start with. And I go into a lot more detail on fertility foods.
And there's a lot of recipes in these books too. So it's just such a great resource for everyone who wants to eat healthy.
And I can tell you, we have so many testimonials of people who couldn't get pregnant and got pregnant, to people who planned carefully for their babies, who ate this way when they're pregnant, and these babies are just beautiful. These are the people that are going to solve all our problems for us when they grow up.
100% agreed. All of I call them my babies, right? Because I helped to grow them from before the moms got pregnant. So we nourish the baby. I call it the baby house, right? The mom,
Yes.
and then we grow a healthy baby. And these babies, like you said, they're not just beautiful, their developmental markers are early, they're brilliant.
Yes.
I'll tell you a quick story. Yeah, they're happy children. I'll tell you a funny story about one of them just before we end. This happened last week. The baby is now 5, beautiful, happy, smart child, bilingual. And the dad was on getting his health checkup, and we found that he had a fungus going on in the body. And I was asking him, so did anything change? Did you eat something different? And the little girl was standing there and she says to me, yeah, the pipe in the bathroom is leaking and they had to cut a hole and it's not fixed yet. So they had mold going on, and he neglected to mention that to me.
Yeah.
But she knew, like
She knew.
she knew what the problem was. I tried to get a video of her saying that again, but she wouldn't do it. She was just fooling around with me and wanted to say other things. So if this information was helpful, please make sure to check out the Weston A. Price Foundation. You can actually join as a member and support them. It's a nonprofit organization, so it's a tax deductible donation to join as a member, and you'll get benefits.
Well, they get them. It's a subscription, really. They get a magazine. Quarterly magazine.
Great. Yes. And so you get a constant source of good information. And if you have any questions or need help with your health or fertility, you can email me at questions@drcori.com. You can also join my mailing list, and I send out information like this on a weekly basis to you. And I'll put a link in the description to join the mailing list. So I want to thank you once again, Sally. I hope you'll consider coming back another time, because there's still so much, there's a never-ending amount of information to talk about. And until we see you all again, please stay healthy.